Hey folks, it's man once again, doing this video again, because I had done this video, but then about 10 minutes in, the fucking antivirus popped up and froze my video, and then my sound like Zardoz, and then the whole video, rest of the video was out of sync. But as folks on my channel know, I am reviewing the Universal Monster movies, and next up is The Mummy from 1932. And you'll probably see up there that'll say review slash rant because there is parts of this that I like, but at the end of the day, if someone asked me, am I a fan of this movie or not, I would put it in the not category. Because I like Dracula, really enjoy Frankenstein, I did reviews for both of those. But there's a couple things I liked about The Mummy. One thing I want to say real quick, I did a fuck up on my either Dracula or Frankenstein reviews of both of them. Those films really don't have music for most of it, but this does. This does have music for quite a few parts, and the music is decent. I'll say the other parts that are decent. Boris Karloff is good. He's a very subdued performance. The makeup on the mummy, when you see it for like the 30 seconds in the film, and then even the makeup when he's Ardith Bay, made by Jap Pierce. Jap Pierce did a good job. Boris Karloff did a good job. Edward Van Sloan, who is Van Helsing in Dracula, he comes back. He does fine. Some of the Egyptian background, some of the sets, props, the feel of it, I thought was pretty decent. And I even enjoy like the little opening credits where you have like a miniature look of Egypt, and then the camera pulls around and there's the tiles, the mummy on a pyramid. And I like the way how it opens. I thought the first 10 minutes are pretty interesting because these guys find this tomb of Imhotep. Of course, this got remade for 1999's film The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, although two very different films. And I'll say right off the bat, I like that film more than this film. And again, I know it's two completely different films. This is a horror romance movie, while that's a Indiana Jones style action adventure special effects kind of movie. But that movie I liked a lot more than this one. But yeah, I like the first 10, 13 minutes in this hour and 14-minute movie. Even though I'm immature, so there's a line of dialogue where someone actually says, "I guess you got 2 days for the virgins of the temples," and I went, "That'd be a different movie if he got 2 days for the virgins of the temples. That'd be a really peculiarly different movie." But I know it's meant to gay as in happy, not gay as in homosexual. But just when he said that line, it just made me like, he got 2 days for the virgins. I'm immature, I know, but I had to chuckle at that line. But they find the belongings of Imhotep. Edward Van Sloan says, don't open this. There's a curse on it. Him and this other guy leave. The younger guy, he doesn't listen. He opens it, look at the scroll. And a little bit you see a Boris Karloff as the mummy, him waking up, slowly awakening. There's no music in this scene, which I was fine with. I like this little scene. And then you see the hand come out and take the scroll, and the guy looks and screams. And I thought he did a good job as a guy who went completely insane just like that. Like, he's laughing. The way he laughed and the way he's like, I thought he did a good job. And someone goes, "Hey, what's wrong? What's wrong?" And the guy's like, "He went for a little walk. You should have seen his face." Like, the way he said it, and you tell that this guy, when you find out later he died in a straitjacket, you buy it. What's funny is that that's all you see of the mummy is 30 seconds. So all this makeup that Boris Karloff went through, and I think he even said it was like the worst. It was the most difficult makeup he's ever gone through. And there's even a picture, like, even if you go on Wikipedia, there's a picture of, you see Boris Karloff head to toe, when he grabs the scroll. But in the movie, it's just his hand. And then when he leaves, you just see the tails of his bandages. I don't know why they did that. I guess to make it more mysterious. Okay, but still, it's like you bandage him up to head to toe, even waist down. You never even see him waist down. You only see him like this. And what's funny, another thing is he looks like this, but later on they have a flashback, and when they bandage him, they bandage the whole body. They bandage his arms together, like they bandage it all across his arms, and his face, his mouth, his nose. And yet there's nothing there. Where are the bandages? I guess you just say after 3,700 years, the bandages probably were rotted away. But I mention it because I know someone else would mention it if I didn't. But that's all you see of the Mummy in a film called The Mummy. It's more about Boris Karloff's very subdued performance as Ardith Bey, who sees this woman who is the reincarnation of his love that he, over 3,000 years ago, wanted to bring back to life and said this stuff, and they caught him. They said, you broke a rule, unjust, what you're doing is unjust. Basically, he fucked up. They put him and they wrap him and turn him into that. But the film is fair. First off, the film is way too similar to Dracula. It even in the making of, because get into not too much backstory, but of course Frankenstein was a big hit, and they're like, okay, now Boris Karloff is our main guy. He's our new Lon Chaney. Not Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi, he can only play Dracula. That's what people said. He was typecast. But Boris Karloff, he was the Frankenstein monster. He can play anybody now, like Lon Chaney. And at this point, they just promote him as Karloff. They just use his last name, or Karloff the Uncanny. Again, he became their new Lon Chaney, so he got a lot more roles, bigger roles than say Bela Lugosi or such. And Teen Tut, a little few years before, had been found, so the public was still interested in this Teen Tut and Egypt and mummies. Okay, we're doing these monster movies, let's have a movie. I think one of the titles was going to be Imhotep, but, or some other titles, but they said The Mummy. And it's written by Karl Freund. I might have said the last name wrong. He was a cinematographer on Dracula. He was getting to direct this. I know he and the leading female, Zita Johann, they didn't get along at all. And apparently he treated her like shit because, since in case this film screws up, he wanted a scapegoat and he wanted to use her. At the same time, she seemed like a really kooky girl. Like she talked about, oh yeah, she probably fainted, but like, oh yeah, she had a near-death experience, and I don't know, like hearing on some of the making of, which I found out some of them was actually on YouTube. You can look it up. She seemed like a kind of a weird girl. And, well, I mean, there's not much other backstory than that I'm going to say. And in case if you're wondering, this has Mummy Dearest, a horror tradition unearthed, human-made monsters, life in our Jap peers, unraveling the legacy of the Mummy, which is like 10 minutes and half its promotion for the Mummy and the Mummy Returns with Brendan Fraser. The Mummy Archives, where they show the pictures and posters. Commentary by Rick Baker, Scott Essman, Steve Haberman, Bob Burns, and Brent Armstrong. Really, four of those guys are together, and Rick Baker isn't. Rick Baker like shows up, and he's recorded separately, and you hear him like 3 times throughout the commentary. One in the first 10 minutes, one somewhere in the middle, and one at the end. And I don't know why they got Rick Baker to do this, because even he admits this isn't his favorite Universal Monster movie, but he does like the makeup, and I like the makeup, and I like Boris Karloff. But you don't really see the Mummy that much, and even he said this wasn't one of his favorite Universal Monster movies, so I'm like, why did you not get him for this film? instead. But you did him for the Mummy. I mean, I'm pretty damn sure Rick Baker's more of a fan of the Mummy. The Mummy. Well, he's not. More of a fan of the Wolfman because American Wolf in London, doing the Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. I think he talks about it in the featurettes about the Wolfman, but I'm like, if you don't get him on a commentary on one of these things, why not Frankenstein, the Wolfman, but why the Mummy? But anyway, the reason I say this is too much like Dracula, you have an undead person who wants this woman, who uses jewels for hypnosis. You have Edward Van Sloan as another Van Helsing type of character. He's a guy who believes in the supernatural. He's a guy who stands up against the bad guy. He even has a talisman. And Dracula had a cross. Here has a talisman to protect himself. He's pretty much playing another Van Helsing. You have David Manners, who is the young guy who falls in love with a girl. Well, at that time he was in love with the girl. And Dracula, what's he playing in this? A young guy who falls in love with a girl. Very quickly, I might add. And the two of them, David Manners and Edward Van Sloan, the same two guys in Dracula, they go off against the Mummy in order to save the bad guy, in order to save the girl from the bad guy, just like in Dracula. And it's, I mean, even the making of talks about how it's very similar to Dracula. And it's like, I would just rather watch Dracula and watch Bela Lugosi's performance. Because I like Boris Karloff in the film, but it's not like a favorite performance of mine. I mean, I have to say I liked his performance in Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and such more. I mean, I still like it, but it is a subdued performance. So it's not like a favorite of mine. And after those 10, 13 minutes of build-up, and you see the Mummy for like 30 seconds, apparently in the sequels you see a lot more of the Mummy. Like I know there's some sequels with Lon Chaney Jr. and such. But I mean, the Mummy as a villain was always, okay, he's in bandages, he's very slow, he's dragging his feet. And here it's less about the Mummy and more about Ardith Bay and wanting this woman who is the reincarnation of his love from back in the day. Gets her under his spell, much like Dracula would do. Because at the end he wants to kill her and put her soul into a mummy and revive the mummy so that she can live forever like he can. So she wants a woman to live forever, like probably kind of like Mina and Dracula. I mean, that's what I mean. It's just too goddamn similar to Dracula. I felt like I was watching Deja Vu, and I think Dracula is a better movie. I think Dracula has a bit more atmosphere, a bit more mood and lighting, and Bela Lugosi has more to his performance than Boris Karloff. I think Boris Karloff is not bad, but it's not much to his performance. And like after the rest of the hour is pretty much just 10 years later. Ardith Bay shows up, and he, as Boris Karloff's Ardith Bay, tells these two diggers, one of them, David Manners, that you should look over there because you don't find this princess's tomb. They did. They find it. It's put in a museum in Cairo or wherever. Ardith Bay, goes in to look at the ancient princess's, tomb and where her body's at. And tries to get this girl which the actress I didn't really care for, Zita Johann. She was there for me. She was just there, take her or leave her. Puts her in a daze. He's in the place. A guard finds him. A guard goes off camera to get Boris Karloff, and you hear the guard get killed. They find the guard dead the next day. They figure out that Boris Karloff has something to do with this. I didn't kind of like when Van Helsing was telling the guy. You even have three guys. You have Van Helsing, the father of the girl, and David Manners. In this film, well, actually, no, in Dracula, the father of the girl, David Manners, and Van Helsing. Here you have Edward Van Sloan playing Van Helsing Part 2, David Manners, and David Manners' father. So you have a father, David Manners, and Edward Van Sloan. Only Edward Van Sloan is the one who really figures out that you are who I now know you are. Again, very similar to what Van Helsing was talking to Dracula. It just almost feels like a fucking remake of Dracula. It's Dracula 2 Walk Like an Egyptian, or Dracula 2 Egyptian style. I mean, really, it's almost like a big ripoff of Dracula. That's what it feels like, except it has Egyptian and Boris Karloff. And it just wasn't that. I would just rather Dracula, which has its problems, including the ending. I just rather watch that than the Mummy. I like Dracula. The Mummy, again, this is sort of rant review because I'm not a big fan of this movie. I don't hate it like I'm yelling and screaming to the heavens. I'm glad I saw it. I'm cool to have. It was cool to look at the features, but again, it got boring. And not because I need something to happen every 5 seconds, but it just wasn't really too intriguing. He gives the David Mayer's father a heart attack. He puts the girl on the days and shows her a flashback, and the flashback was decent. You find out what Boris Karloff wanted to get this girl back in the day, over 3,000 years ago, back to life, and he did this. He got mummified, and again, all the wrappings around his face and stuff. But then, I guess they rotted away. That's why there's no wrappings there. Who knows? Maybe they took them off screen. That's not a big deal, I know. But again, I mention that just because I know someone else would mention if I don't. Again, this does have music throughout the film, unlike Dracula and Frank. Like Dracula has it at the very beginning and once in the theater. The rest of it, there's no music. Frankenstein, you have it at the very beginning and then during the festival, but the rest of it, no music. Here, it does have music throughout, and it's decent music. Again, I think I fucked it up when I was talking about Dracula and Frankenstein. I mentioned the Mummy. The Mummy is not a no music movie. It does have music throughout. And it is decent music. And the flashback to the mummification, you have some decent looking shots. Like when the shadows of the folks carrying the thing that Boris Karloff is in, in order to place him for his resting, in which, of course, he's been dug up at the beginning of the film. Tries to kill David Manners. David Manners grabs the talisman in time, so he doesn't die, just gets knocked out. Van Helsing Pordieu gets David Manners, and David Manners and Edward Van Sloan go off to chase the bad guy who has the girl, like the ending of Dracula. And the ending is just pretty much the two guys get there. Boris Karloff shows his ring, they do like this. The girl is able to get away and pray to the gods, which destroys the scroll. And Boris Karloff, you see a little bit of him being turned into dust. His face dissolve, like you have it dissolve where his face changes a little bit, cuts away, you see a little bit more, cuts away, and then he's dust, a pile of dust. And then pretty much the movie ends. So it's not really much of an ending either. But the rest of the movie wasn't much either. I mean, the positive you say, the Egyptian feel to it made it a little bit interesting. I mean, yeah, I could say this is better than Dawn of the Mummy, which is another movie I saw. Dawn of the Mummy sucks. I could say this actually has a little bit more, even for 1932, has a little bit more professionalism with it. And it has Boris Karloff, which even in a subdued performance, he still does a good job. Yeah, I enjoy the opening titles, the way that was done. I enjoy some of the makeup that you see of the mummy for 30 seconds. But the rest of it just very sort of more boring version of Dracula. That it doesn't have Bela Lugosi's presence and performance. It just has Boris Karloff, who's more subdued, and that was the point of it. And it's not bad at all. It's just Ardith Bay wasn't really that interesting of a villain. I was interested in Bela Lugosi's Dracula, even when he's looking, you have the lights under his eyes. Here, Ardith Bay he wasn't that intriguing. It wasn't that interesting. I didn't give a fuck about him wanting this girl back that is reincarnation of his woman. I didn't care about David Manners, who falls in love with this girl in like 30 seconds. Literally like 30 seconds. And he's about ready to kiss her. The girl, she was there. It just really wasn't that interesting of a film. The ending wasn't exciting. And other than Boris Karloff, a couple pieces of music and the opening titles, and seeing the mummy, Jack Pierce's makeup for 30 seconds, and even Arthur Bay, the makeup is pretty decent. You have a couple shots like this where Boris Karloff's looking head on, and you don't see his eyes, and the lights reveal his eyes. You have a couple decent shots like that, but the movie itself, it just tedious or unexciting or not as atmospheric to me as other Universal monster movies. The story didn't interest me or intrigue me. The David Manners and Zita Johann, I didn't care about those characters. And it just felt too much like Dracula. It felt like Dracula again. Dracula with sand. I just, I would say, even though it's two completely different movies, I would say I still like the 1999 The Mummy more. I haven't seen the other Mummy sequels, which really are not sequels to this, because it's a different character of the villain. But I like to see him one day. But again, whenever I pick up that 30 film pack of Universal Monster movies on DVD, which will probably be way, way, way down the road. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of this movie. I'm really not. It has a couple of decent things, but overall, Dracula and Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein are much better than this one. And of these 8 films, I can already tell will be one of my least favorites. That and Phantom of the Opera from the 40s would be my 2 least favorites. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I know The Mummy has a lot of fans. I just didn't find it that interesting, or atmospheric, or creepy, or spooky, or even Boris Karloff's performance Art of the Bay. I liked it, but at the same time, it's not. It doesn't hold a candle to Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and I'm sure he's done other films. Like, I've heard a lot of good things about The Black Cat. The only DVD I can find worth a shit is a Bela Lugosi collection, or that, or a DVD-R, which I just fucking try to find friends to make me DVD-R if I'm fucking buying a DVD-R. Anyway, I'm going off tangent. But The Mummy from 1932, can't say I'm much of a fan of it. That's why it'll be like a rant/review, or review/rant. This is, yeah, some good notices, but at the end of the day, for the final time, if someone were to ask me if I'm a fan of The Mummy or not, I would go not. I am a fan of Dracula, I'm a fan of Frankenstein, not of this one. But next up, you should see a review of The Invisible Man, which is a better movie, and you'll learn more about that. Thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.